Hello and welcome to another episode of the Agency Leadership Podcast. I'm Chip Griffin.
And I am Ginny Dietrich.
And Ginny, I think AI is going to solve all of my problems. We've
I
said
think so
this
too.
before, but
Yes.
I'm going to change my whole business model around it.
I think you should. Fire everybody. You could fire me as your co-host. AI can just do it for you.
I wonder if the AI would talk back less.
Probably. Although if I program it, I'll program it for you so that it talks back a sufficient amount.
Excellent. Just what I need.
You're welcome.
Well, at least, maybe the AI wouldn't yawn at me like you did just before we started recording. So
I shouldn't even be tired either. I got 9 hours of sleep last night. I don't know what my problem
I just assumed you were expressing your boredom with me
No,
prior to the start of the show.
No.
I mean, usually it takes a couple minutes for most of our listeners to get that bored with me. So
No, I'm not bored with you.
Okay.
Just sleepy.
Well, I'm with you on that. All right. But we are going to talk about AI. And in particular, there was a good article in The Atlantic recently that is consistent with some of the things that I've been saying in talking with clients. And I think it's helpful to think about. And that is whether or not there is an AI bubble and what it means. And it's not, in my view, it's not so much about a macro AI bubble, sort of like we think about, the internet bubble in the early 2000s. And I think there is certainly some of that, but that's really more about investing in some of the businesses and infrastructure and that kind of thing. But I think for small agencies, there is the potential for an AI bubble that comes about because we all get too focused on either what kind of threat AI is or what kind of opportunity AI is. And we've said before on this, we've talked about AI a lot. So I was a little reluctant to come back to it, but I think that thinking about it in these terms may be helpful because it's not about AI being either the panacea or evil. It's that we may be adjusting our models too much too quickly because some of these things may not quite be there. And in particular, the Atlantic had a great example. And it was from a study that was done with some software developers. And the software developers were given AI to help them do their jobs. And the purpose of the study was to try to figure out, was it a 20% efficiency improvement, 40%, 60%? What was it? And ultimately what they discovered was it decreased their efficiency because part of the challenge with AI, and I'm sure many of us have seen this, is when it works well, God, it works great. It just, and we're impressed and we sit there and say, that's amazing. But we don't factor in the times it doesn't work and the times we have to argue with it and fight.
Right.
And so if we're good, and I do this a lot. Maybe it shows something about me that I argue with the computer. But I was trying out Gamma recently, which is a service that lets you build PowerPoint decks effectively. And I threw something in, just kind of randomly grabbed an outline, threw it in, and it actually did a really nice job of creating the first thing that I sent to it. And I'm like, that's great. I'm like, okay, well, can you make these modifications to it? And it just wouldn't do it. It kept, I said, can we put, my logo at the bottom of the slide, in the footer? And so it puts it in, it's like a quarter of the screen. I'm like, no. I said, can you make it smaller?
Size, just move it.
And it's like, great. That's a great idea. Let's make it smaller. And it gives it to me the exact same size.
Oh.
And it makes it completely unusable because obviously you don't really want your company logo to take up a quarter of the slide. That's just dumb. So I think we need to think about all of the effort that we're putting into AI and factor that in when we're thinking about our own efficiencies, because I'm afraid that some people may be changing their models too much, changing their pricing too much, because they're looking at the successful implementation of AI and not factoring in all of the challenges along the way, at least as it exists in September of 2025.
Right. Gartner has their hype cycle, right? And so it looks at things from that perspective. And, we get really excited. We're human beings. We get really excited. There's something coming. There's like all this, like, oh, that's scary. We're not going to do anything. Then we get really excited about it. Then it dips down and then it comes back up before it's like scalable and something that we use. The internet was one, email was one, social media was another, those kinds of things, right? Well, in the hype cycle, AI is now in the trough of disappointment. So it's in that section of the cycle where it's like, oh, maybe this isn't going to work so well. And you have companies like Salesforce who just laid off 30,000 people because they think AI is going to replace those human beings. And what they're going to find in the trough of disappointment is that that's not the case. And I think that we have to think about that as, we're certainly, I'm not laying off 30,000 people. You're not laying off 30,000 people. I would imagine most of our listeners are not laying off 30,000 people, but you have to think about it from that kind of perspective of AI is great for some things. It cannot replace human beings yet. And so when you think about how you're using it, those are the kinds of things you have to consider. One of the things I say to my team all the time, I'll get something from a team member and I'll be like, did you use AI for this? And my favorite is when they're like, oh, just to outline. I'm like, really? Because on the third page, the 6th bullet point, it's definitely AI. And I know that because you didn't, it's talking to you.
Right.
And you didn't edit it. So it can't replace people yet. And I think that's what I continue to tell my team is you can absolutely use it, but you have to use your brain and you have to edit the work that you're getting, because as a first draft, it's crap. It's not good. So we have to take all of this with a grain of salt and make sure that we're using it effectively.
Yeah, and I think that, part of the challenge is if we say, okay, well, because of this, we can now, churn out social or blog posts or graphics or whatever that much faster and all of that. And we're building our staffing models around it. We're building our pricing models around it. It becomes a problem.
Yeah. Yep.
When we realize that it's not quite as efficient. It's still good. It's still helpful. We still ought to be using it. And some of this stuff will continue to get better. Most of it will continue to get better. And so at some point it will get there. It's sort of like during that first wave of the internet bubble in the early 2000s, there were plenty of businesses that came out, got a lot of attention, and then failed miserably, only to see 10 or 15 years later an almost identical business come up and blossom because now it was time for it. The technology was there, the market was there. And so some of these things, it's not that they're not a good idea, it's just that they're not quite fully baked yet. And as particularly as small businesses, we need to be careful about how heavily we lean into some of these things without understanding what the risk of that is and understanding whether it is truly everything that we believe it is in our happiest moment. And with the troughs of disappointment and the peak, I forget what the peak is called, but the ups and downs, we're all going to feel those. But when we're building business models and strategies for our agencies, we need to think about that in a little bit more of a level line as opposed to riding the waves or the dips too much, because that's where we start to make bad decisions.
Yeah, and I think you see this on the web all the time, right? You have people who jump onto the next wave hoping that they're going to get that upswing of popularity, success, whatever it happens to be before it goes down. And then you see them jump on the next one and the next one and the next one. First of all, that's a crappy way to live. The constant yin and yang and ups and downs. No agency owner should live like that. But secondly, you have to really think about what are we strategically trying to do? And I will tell you, I mean, I'm sure it's clear, but I love AI. I love it. I think it has made me more efficient. It's made me more productive. You know what it's done more than anything? It's allowed me to stop procrastinating, because when I have something really challenging, I tend to procrastinate it, put it off. It's a big project. I know it's going to take me time to get started. And so I put it off. I'm also highly deadline driven. So if you tell me it's due in 12 hours, it'll get done. If you tell me it's due in 4 weeks, I'll do it the last 12 hours, right? So that's just my personality. So what it has done is it has allowed me to say, okay, this is a huge project. I'm going to take 15 minutes just to outline the steps so that I can get it done more effectively. I don't procrastinate anymore, because that allows me to at least get it into my workflow and get things accomplished. That's where it's made me most efficient. So I think we have to think about those kinds of things. Like, how are we bringing it into our workflow to make us more productive and make us more efficient, but not replace the thinking or the creativity?
Right. And I think the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that in uses like that where it's acting as our assistant, I think that has a lot more utility, a lot more
Mhm.
staying power, and
Mhm.
will just continue to improve as we learn how to use the technology more effectively and as the technology continues to evolve. I think the bigger challenge comes for agencies when they see this as something that can help them do things at scale, right?
Yes.
So it's not assisting an individual, making them more effective, efficient, et cetera, but instead it is using it, as some companies are, to replace large numbers of human beings.
Yep.
And I think that it's a risk for multiple reasons. One is whether or not it is truly as good as you think it is, and can do things without that level of supervision, intervention, et cetera, that we're doing when we're using it as an assistant. But we also need to keep in mind that as we all get sucked into this, it is incredibly likely, if not certain, that all of the providers of AI are going to start ratcheting up the prices. And so
Sure.
what looks today like a huge cost savings likely may not be in just a few short years. And we've seen this before. We saw this in the early days of internet ads, for example, search ads. It used to be that you could buy ads on Google search super cheap. And now not so much. And it didn't take all that long before it got to a place where it was so costly that it was starting to become much more similar to other advertising media. And so
Right.
you need to keep in mind that it may not ever get fully to the price of the same productivity of a full-time equivalent, cost the same in the AI, but it's going to be a lot more than it is today. So if you see it today as an 80% savings, it may only be a 40% savings when all is said and done. And is that still okay? Would you still have uprooted your whole business model for that or not? And I can't answer that for you,
Right.
but I think you
Maybe.
need to think those things through
Or it
before you invest too
depends.
heavily. What's that?
It
It
depends.
depends. Everything depends.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Like, it's just, what there's been a conversation both in a private Facebook group I'm in and in the Spin Sucks community of late of how people are not hiring new college graduates anymore because it kind of does replace them. Like, it does replace the research, the media list development, the initial pitches, things like that, that you would have, an intern or a a brand spanking new young professional do. So how do we continue that? But then how do we hire young professionals? Because we can't not hire a brand new college graduate, right? How do we bring them into the workforce, and how are we teaching them? Are we teaching them to become AI prompt engineers? Are we teaching them to become better editors? Like, what are we teaching them to do? Because AI can do a lot of that really basic stuff that an intern would normally do.
Absolutely. And I think that becomes then an even bigger challenge for small agencies, because small agencies have always struggled with the idea, do we hire seasoned professionals who are more expensive, or do we hire more junior people who we can use more cost effectively? And this does tend to skew it more in terms of let's hire those more seasoned, more expensive people, and we'll rely on the
Sure.
AI
Yeah.
for all the lower level stuff. But that may be a challenging business model to truly make work, in part because now you've got senior people who then have to manage in a
Yep.
much more hands-on way with the AI a lot of that more basic stuff. And I would argue that it might be more worth looking at, can you use the AI to improve the quality and output of more junior people, right? If the junior people have an assistant, could they accelerate their own growth more quickly? And I don't have the answer to whether that's true or not, but it's something that I would be interested in looking at if I
Testing.
were
Yeah.
trying to scale
Yeah.
up a small business, as opposed to saying, okay, all the grunt work will be done by AI and we'll hire just senior people, because that's a very difficult business model to price correctly.
I also think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous to hire as a senior professional. I think it's dangerous to hire only, seasoned professionals because now you're losing out on, you know, creativity, youth, like all of the sort of like rosy colored glasses kinds of things that help a business grow. I think that's really dangerous as well.
Yeah,
You
and
need a
you want to
balance.
develop future leaders for your own
Yep.
business. Obviously, I don't necessarily buy into the notion that we need to do it for the good of the PR and marketing community, and we got to give them opportunities because otherwise we won't have them in the future. It really does need to be more selfish for your own business, but you can develop them within your own business so that over the next 4 to 6 years they become that seasoned professional who learns your way of doing things as an
That's right.
agency and can contribute in a more meaningful way to your own business.
Yeah, I think like I said, I think it's dangerous to rely on that. And to come full circle, it's dangerous to rely on AI to replace human beings, because that's just, while it's tempting, it's just not where we are yet.
No, I mean, look, I think there are certain things that can be replaced by AI. So I'm not sticking my head in the sand and say don't reduce any headcount. I think for most small agencies, probably AI is not going to enable you to reduce
No.
headcount. It's
Yeah.
difficult for me to, all the agencies that I've advised and looked at over the years, it's hard to think of very many who could actually save even one FTE on the backs of what AI can do for them today.
Yep.
It
Yep.
certainly can make them more efficient. It certainly can open additional doors. It can free up some time, but I have a very difficult time seeing anywhere it's a one-for-one replacement. But there are certainly other industries, other kinds of business where it absolutely can help to reduce the headcount, but maybe not completely replace all of the headcount in a particular function area.
Well, to come back to the Atlantic article that you mentioned at the start, it showed that it wasn't, and you would think that AI would be really good at a developer's job at creating, being able to do that, because there's no creativity to it, right? And so you would think it would be really great at that. And it found that it wasn't. It found that they were actually spending more time directing the AI and getting the information, getting the right kinds of things out of the AI that they needed, than to just do it themselves. So we have to be really careful here. And like I said, I'm a huge, huge fan. I love it, but it's also not replacing any humans from my perspective.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it ultimately, even though the models are very good at doing the coding for programmers, it's a double-edged sword, because for an op-ed or something, 80% is probably good enough. For
Yeah,
code, 80% isn't good enough. You got to get to
right.
100%,
Yeah.
because any bugs in there are going to be a problem.
Yes, you do.
And as someone who has written computer code before, I can tell you that, even 98% ain't all that good, because you still need that other 2%, and you'll be chasing that, forever if you can't figure out exactly where it is. So, there is a difference in the kinds of work that it's doing. So in some ways it was a good test of it, because it's an area where it's strong. On the other hand, I would also argue it may not be the best, because there is very little margin for error in coding, because you still have to get to a fixed result at the end from the logic that you've put into place. Whereas in
Right.
a written piece or a graphics piece, it's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
you're right.
crosses the threshold.
Yeah, 80% is good enough. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I think if we get to 80% good enough on this show, that's probably sufficient. I mean,
I need to buy one of those sound machines so I can do like clapping and things for you. Yeah, I need that.
there you go. So, I mean, let's face it, some weeks for us, 50% is probably good enough. So
Yep.
before we drop down below that 50% mark, though, I think we'll draw this episode to a conclusion. This has been the Agency Leadership Podcast. I'm Chip Griffin.
I'm Jenny Dietrich.
And it depends.